You keep looking around and wondering why it feels like everyone else is moving forward while you're still stuck in the same place. You see screenshots, quiet confidence, steady growth, and you tell yourself they must be lucky. You tell yourself they caught the right moment, the right move, the right run. And deep down, that idea gives you comfort because if it's luck, then it's not really your fault. But that same idea is also the cage that keeps you where you are. Luck is the story you tell yourself when you don't want to look too closely at your daily behavior. Luck is what you blame when you don't want to accept that results are built slowly, quietly, and without drama. Profitable traders are not waking up with better fortune than you. They're waking up with better habits. They're making boring choices over and over again while you're still hoping one good day will change everything. You've seen it. A trade moves in someone's favor and your mind jumps straight to chance. But you don't see the hours they didn't trade. You don't see the days they sat on their hands while price did nothing interesting. You don't see the times they walked away when everything in them wanted action. You only see the outcome, never the restraint. And restraint doesn't look impressive from the outside. You've probably told yourself, if I could just catch one good move, I'd be fine. That belief feels harmless, but it quietly trains you to wait instead of build. Waiting for chance keeps you passive. Building discipline forces you to be responsible. Every trader who stays stuck is secretly waiting for permission from the market to feel confident. Profitable traders already decided who they are before the market opens. Nothing about this is random. Every result you see is the echo of 1,000 small decisions. When you rush a setup, when you trade because you're bored, when you size bigger because you feel behind, when you stay in a losing trade because you hope it will turn, those are not accidents. Those are choices. And choices compound just like money does. You don't lose because the market hates you. You lose because you keep handing control to your emotions and calling it fate. The market doesn't know you exist. It doesn't reward effort or punish desire. It only reflects behavior. And right now, your behavior is telling a very clear story. Once you start to see that, something uncomfortable happens. You realize the real battle was never out there. It's been inside you the whole time. Every day, before you ever click a button, there's a quiet war going on in your head. Fear is whispering that you'll miss out if you don't act now. Greed is telling you to push harder when things go your way. Doubt is questioning every decision right after you make it. Hope is convincing you to stay when logic says leave. Impatience is tapping its foot, rushing you into trades that were never meant for you. And when things go wrong, anger steps in, demanding payback. You felt all of it. The tight chest when price goes against you, the rush when it moves your way, and you start imagining what you'll do with the money, the sudden urge to adjust, interfere, fix. That feeling that if you just hold a little longer or add a little more, you can force a better outcome. These emotions don't feel dangerous in the moment. They feel reasonable. They feel human. That's why they're so destructive. Profitable traders don't lack these emotions. They've just stopped obeying them. They've learned to notice the feeling without acting on it. Fear shows up, but it doesn't get the steering wheel. Greed knocks, but it doesn't get to decide the size. Doubt speaks, but it doesn't rewrite the plan mid-trade. That's the difference. Not emotionless, but disciplined. The moment you start reacting instead of following rules, the trade is no longer about the market. It's about you trying to feel safe, important, or relieved. That's when logic leaves the room. That's when losses turn into spirals. One bad decision invites another, and suddenly you're not trading anymore. You're coping. You've probably stared at a red day and thought, I just need one win to make this better. That thought is poison. It turns trading into emotional repair work. Profitable traders don't trade to feel better. They trade to execute a plan. Feelings are allowed, but they are never in charge. When you catch yourself watching every tick, adjusting every move, bargaining with the screen, that's your signal. The internal war is winning, and the only way to stop it is to remove choice from the heat of the moment. You don't rise to discipline under pressure. You fall to the level of your preparation. Once that inner noise starts to quiet, even just a little, you finally have room to build something solid. Not a complicated system, not a perfect strategy, something simple, something you can follow even on your worst days. A written roadmap that tells you who you are as a trader before emotion has a chance to rewrite the story. This roadmap isn't about predicting anything. It's about deciding in advance when you trade, when you don't, how much you risk, when you stop, why you're even doing this in the first place. Most traders skip this because it feels slow and restrictive. But structure is freedom. Structure is what keeps you from self destruction. You need rules that are boring enough to be repeatable, clear enough that there's no debate, rules that don't change because you had a bad morning or a good streak. When you write them down, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop pretending every moment is unique. You accept that consistency beats cleverness every single time. A simple plan removes guesswork. Guesswork is where fear and greed hide. When you know exactly what you're allowed to do and what you're not, decisions become mechanical, not cold, calm. And calm is where clarity lives. Part of that plan is knowing your rhythm. There are times you think clearly and times you don't. Profitable traders respect their energy. They don't force focus when it's not there. They don't trade just because the market is open. They trade when they are ready. That alone eliminates more losses than any indicator ever could. You also need non negotiables, lines you don't cross no matter what, a maximum loss for the day, a point where you stop, not because you're broken, but because you're human. These limits aren't signs of weakness, they are signs of maturity. They say, I value longevity more than excitement. With a plan like that in place, something shifts. Money stops feeling like fuel for emotion and starts feeling like something you protect. And that's where most traders fail quietly. They obsess over making money and ignore the art of keeping it. But survival is the first job. Growth comes second. Protecting capital is not glamorous. It doesn't feel like progress. But every dollar you don't lose is a dollar that can compound tomorrow. Profitable traders treat their money with respect because they know how hard it is to earn back what's gone. They don't gamble with size. They don't double down to feel brave. They understand that small losses are tuition, not insults. Risk rules are not there to limit your upside. They are there to keep you in the game long enough to learn. When you risk too much, you shorten your learning window. You turn normal mistakes into career ending ones. Profitable traders accept that being wrong is part of the process. They just refuse to let wrong wipe them out. They also know when to stop, not just for the day, but emotionally. After a loss, there's a temptation to prove something, to get it back, to show you're still capable. That's ego talking. And ego is expensive. Walking away is not quitting, it's choosing control over chaos. When protection is in place, losses stop being the enemy, they become information. Clean losses, taken according to plan, don't damage confidence. They build it because you did what you said you would do. You honored your rules. That integrity matters more than the outcome, but not all losses are equal. And this is where growth accelerates if you're honest. A loss taken by the rules is a good loss. A loss taken from impulse is a lesson you can't afford to repeat. Profitable traders review not to punish themselves, but to understand what was clean, what was emotional, what can be removed next time. They have rituals around this, simple ones. Writing a few notes, marking what followed the plan and what didn't, not obsessing, just observing. Over time, Patterns appear. You start to see the same mistakes show up before every bad run. And once you see them, you can interrupt them. Pain doesn't have to break you. It can shape you. Every loss carries data. Every mistake is pointing at a behavior that needs refinement. Traders who grow are not the ones who avoid pain. They are the ones who extract value from it. And slowly, almost quietly, you change. You react less. You wait more. You don't need excitement to feel engaged. Flat periods stop bothering you because you understand their role. Progress stops being measured in days and starts being measured in months. This is the long road. There is no dramatic finish line, just steady commitment, showing up, doing the same simple things well, protecting your energy, knowing when to push and when to rest, letting consistency do the heavy lifting. Over time, people will look at your results and call it luck. They won't see the restraint, the patience, the losses you took cleanly, the days you didn't trade. And that's fine. You'll know the truth. You didn't become profitable because you figured something out. You became profitable because you became someone different, calmer, more honest, more disciplined. Someone who stopped chasing and started building. Someone who understands that success here isn't loud, it's quiet, and it lasts. You start to notice that the loudest days are rarely the most important ones. The days where nothing happens, where you sit there and do very little, those are the days that actually shape you. Most traders don't fail because of one big mistake. They fail because they can't tolerate the quiet. They need action to feel alive. They need movement to feel productive. And when the market doesn't give it to them, they create it themselves. That's when trouble starts. You've felt that itch. The screen is open, you're watching, you're telling yourself you're being patient, but inside, you're restless. You start zooming in. You start convincing yourself that something is there. Not because it truly fits your plan, but because you want relief from waiting. And the moment you act just to silence that feeling, you've already lost control. Profitable traders understand something most people don't want to accept. Boredom is part of the job. Stillness is part of the job. Sitting through uncertainty without forcing an outcome is a skill. And like any skill, it feels uncomfortable before. It feels natural. When you don't have structure, your mind fills the gaps with stories. What if this is the move? What if I miss it? What if today is different? These thoughts feel urgent, but they're not intelligent. They're emotional reflexes. And every time you act on them, you train your brain to associate impulse with action. That habit is hard to break later. This is why profitable traders simplify everything. Fewer decisions, fewer opportunities, fewer moments where emotion can sneak in. They don't try to catch everything. They don't need to be right often. They just need to be consistent. Consistency doesn't come from motivation. Motivation fades. Consistency comes from identity, from knowing who you are in this space, from deciding ahead of time what kind of trader you refuse to be. You refuse to chase. You refuse to revenge trade. You refuse to trade tired, angry, or distracted. Those refusals matter more than any winning streak. At some point, you realize that discipline is not about forcing yourself to do hard things. It's about removing the option to do stupid things. When your rules are clear, there's nothing to debate. The decision was already made by a calmer version of you. And this changes how losses feel. They stop feeling like personal failures and start feeling like part of the process. You don't spiral anymore. You don't immediately jump back in. You take the hit, you log it, and you move on. That alone puts you ahead of most people. But there's another layer here that few traders talk about, honestly. Confidence. Not fake confidence. Not hype, real confidence built from evidence. the kind that comes from keeping promises to yourself. Every time you follow your rules, even when it costs you, you deposit into that account. Every time you break them, you withdraw. Most traders are broke emotionally before they're broke financially. They don't trust themselves anymore. They hesitate. They second guess. They overcorrect. And that lack of trust creates more mistakes. It's a loop. The only way out is through integrity with your own process. That means doing the right thing even when nobody sees it, especially when nobody sees it. Skipping a trade that almost fits, stopping for the day even though you feel like you could make it back, taking a small loss without turning it into a battle. These moments don't feel heroic, but they build something far more valuable than excitement. As time goes on, you start to care less about being right and more about being stable. You don't need to prove anything to the market. You don't need validation from a big win. Your focus shifts to execution, to showing up and doing your job cleanly. And then there's the patience required to let this compound. This is where most people quit, not because they're losing, but because they're not winning fast enough. Flat periods test your belief more than drawdowns do. When nothing seems to change, your mind starts questioning the whole path. This is where long-term traders separate themselves. They understand that growth doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly. A little less stress, a little more clarity, fewer emotional swings. You don't notice it day to day. You notice it when you look back and realize how differently you respond now. You stop forcing trades during slow periods. You stop increasing size out of frustration. You accept that some weeks are about preservation, not profit. And that acceptance keeps you alive in this game. Energy becomes something you protect. You don't stare at screens all day anymore. You don't let trading bleed into every corner of your life. You show up focused, do your work, and step away. That balance keeps your mind sharp and your decisions clean. Over years, this approach builds something rare: reliability, not flashy results, reliable ones, the kind that don't depend on mood or luck, the kind that come from repetition and restraint. And one day, without any dramatic moment, you realize you're no longer asking why others are profitable, and you're not. The question has changed. Now you're asking how to stay this way, how to protect what you've built, how to continue growing without losing yourself to greed or complacency. That's when you understand the truth. Profitability was never about cracking a code. It was about becoming steady, about choosing discipline over impulse, patience over urgency, structure over chaos. Every single day, you didn't get here by chance. You got here by choice. And that choice, repeated quietly over time, is what separates those who last from those who keep starting over. At this stage, the market starts to feel different to you. Not because it changed, but because you did. The same movements that used to pull you in emotionally now feel neutral. You see them, but they don't demand anything from you. And that's a strange feeling at first, almost uncomfortable, because for a long time, intensity felt like involvement, stress felt like commitment, calm felt like laziness. You had to unlearn that. You start realizing that most people confuse effort with progress. They think the more trades they take, the more serious they are. The more hours they stare at the screen, the more dedicated they must be. But profitable traders understand that effort in the wrong direction only creates exhaustion. Progress comes from precision, not volume. You've probably had days where you were exhausted after trading, mentally drained, emotionally scattered. That wasn't because trading is hard. It was because you were fighting yourself the entire time, making decisions on the fly, second guessing, reacting. That kind of trading burns you out fast. Now, the work feels quieter, less dramatic. You show up with a clear head, You know what you're looking for, and more importantly, what you're not willing to touch. When nothing fits, you don't feel cheated. You feel disciplined. You close the platform without regret. This is where patience stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like power. Another shift happens here too. You stop measuring yourself against other people. Their wins don't trigger you anymore. Their losses don't comfort you. You understand that everyone is on a different timeline with different discipline, different rules, different emotional baggage. Comparison loses its grip when you're grounded in your own process. You also stop trying to make every day count financially. Some days are for observation. Some days are for protecting capital. Some days are for doing nothing. And doing nothing stops feeling like failure. It feels like restraint. Restraint is one of the most underrated skills in trading. Anyone can act. Very few can wait. Very few can sit with uncertainty and not interfere. But that's exactly where consistency is born. You begin to trust that if something is truly meant for you, you won't have to chase it. You won't have to force it. It will fit your rules cleanly or it won't. And if it doesn't, you let it go without resentment. There will be another opportunity. There always is. This mindset protects you from desperation. Desperation is what pushes traders to overtrade, oversize, and overstay. Desperation whispers that time is running out, that you're behind, that this might be your last chance. Calm traders don't hear that voice as loudly because they're not trying to catch up. They're building forward. You also become more honest with yourself, brutally honest, but not cruel. You don't excuse mistakes anymore, but you don't beat yourself up either. You see a bad decision for what it is, learn from it, and move on. No drama, no self-punishment. That emotional neutrality is a sign of growth. Losses don't shake your identity. Wins don't inflate it. You stay grounded either way. And that stability is what allows results to compound quietly in the background. There will still be tough stretches. That never goes away. Periods where nothing works. Periods where you question your progress. The difference now is that you don't abandon your process during those times. You tighten up. You trade smaller. You protect your confidence. You survive. Survival is underrated. Most traders don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they can't survive the uncomfortable middle, the phase where you're no longer reckless but not yet confident, where progress is slow and invisible, where discipline feels lonely. You stay anyway. You stay when it's boring. You stay when it's quiet. You stay when it's frustrating. And staying builds something inside you that no winning streak ever could. Reliability, self-trust, emotional control. Over the long run, those traits matter more than any single trade. They allow you to show up year after year without burning out or blowing up. They allow you to keep learning without feeling desperate. They allow you to grow without ego. Eventually, trading becomes just one part of your life, not your entire emotional world. You don't need it to prove anything about your worth. You don't need it to save you. You approach it as a craft, something you respect, something you manage carefully. And that's when the irony hits you. The moment you stop needing to be profitable is often the moment profitability becomes sustainable because you're no longer forcing it. You're no longer chasing. You're executing. This is the road most people never walk long enough to see. It doesn't promise excitement. It doesn't guarantee fast results, but it offers something far more valuable: stability, longevity, quiet confidence. And if you stay on it long enough, you won't need to ask why others are profitable and you're not. You'll understand exactly why. And more importantly, you'll know exactly who you've become in the process. You begin to understand that this journey was never about beating the market. It was about mastering yourself. The market was just the mirror. Every weakness you carried showed up there. Every habit you avoided fixing exposed itself there. And every time you blamed something outside of you, the lesson waited patiently for you to come back and face it properly. Most people never do. They keep searching for something new, a new idea, a new method, a new explanation that lets them avoid the uncomfortable truth that the gap between where they are and where they want to be is not filled with information. It's filled with behavior. You don't need to know more. You need to do less, but do it better. This is where many traders quietly sabotage themselves again. They reach a place of relative stability and then get bored. They forget how painful the chaos was. They start loosening rules, taking small liberties, one extra trade here, a little more size there. Not because the plan changed, but because comfort set in. Comfort is dangerous when it turns into carelessness. Profitable traders stay respectful, not fearful, respectful. They respect the market enough to follow their rules even when things are going well, especially when things are going well, because they know that discipline isn't tested in losing streaks. It's tested during winning ones. You've probably felt that too. A few good trades stack up, confidence rises, and suddenly the voice shows up again. The one that says, "You're in sync now. You can press a little. You've earned it." That voice has ended more careers than any bad day ever did. The traders who last are the ones who notice that voice and don't follow it. They don't punish themselves for hearing it. They just don't act on it. They understand that discipline isn't about never feeling temptation. It's about not obeying it. Another quiet truth settles in around this time. You realize that the market doesn't owe you consistency. You owe consistency to your process. Some weeks will reward you, some won't. Your job is not to demand fairness. Your job is to execute cleanly regardless. That acceptance removes a lot of emotional friction. You stop arguing with outcomes. You stop feeling betrayed by randomness. You stop taking things personally. The market becomes what it always was, neutral. And when things are neutral, you can think clearly. Clear thinking changes how you review your performance too. You're no longer obsessed with the money. You look at behavior first. Did you follow your rules? Did you respect your limits? Did you trade in the right state of mind? The numbers matter, but they're secondary. Behavior leads, results follow. This shift is subtle, but it's powerful. It turns trading from an emotional roller coaster into a feedback loop. Action, outcome, review, adjustment, repeat. No drama, no self-hate, just steady refinement. You also stop romanticizing struggle. You don't wear stress like a badge of honor anymore. You understand that calm execution is not a sign that you don't care. It's a sign that you finally care enough to do this right. There will still be moments of doubt that never fully disappears. But doubt stops controlling you. It becomes a signal instead of a command. When doubt shows up, you slow down. You check your rules. You reduce risk. You don't panic. That's maturity. Maturity is knowing that you don't have to trade every day to be a trader. You don't have to win every week to be profitable. You don't have to feel confident to act correctly. You just have to be consistent. And consistency is not exciting. It's repetitive. It's showing up and doing the same small things well, even when nobody is watching and nothing dramatic is happening. Over time, this repetition shapes your character. You become less reactive in general, not just in trading. You pause more. You think before acting. You tolerate discomfort without rushing to escape it. Those traits bleed into other areas of your life. That's something few people talk about. Trading done properly changes you as a person. It teaches patience, accountability, emotional regulation. It exposes where you lie to yourself and forces you to confront it. That's why so many people quit. Not because it's too hard technically, but because it demands honesty. It doesn't let you hide behind excuses forever. You stayed. You didn't stay because it was easy. You stayed because you decided to grow. You decided to stop repeating the same cycle. You decided that your future self mattered more than your present comfort. And now, when you look back at who you were at the beginning, you almost don't recognize that person. The impulsive decisions, the emotional swings, the constant need for action, the belief that one big win would fix everything. You know better now. You know that profitability is built quietly, day by day, choice by choice. You know that protecting your capital is protecting your opportunity. You know that losses are not enemies, but tuition. You know that patience is not weakness, but strength. And most importantly, you know that the reason others are profitable and you once were not was never about intelligence or luck. It was about discipline, self-awareness, and the willingness to change. You changed, and that change is what lasts. There's a calm that settles in when you finally stop fighting the process, not relief, calm, the kind that comes from alignment, from knowing that your actions match your intentions, from knowing that even if today gives you nothing, you didn't damage tomorrow. You no longer wake up feeling like you need to force something to happen. You don't carry that quiet panic that used to sit in your chest, whispering that time is running out. You understand now that rushing was never speeding you up. It was slowing you down in disguise. The market starts to feel less like a test and more like a workspace. You show up, you do your job, you leave. You don't take outcomes home with you. You don't replay every decision in your head all night. You trust that you handled yourself the best you could with the information you had. That trust is everything. Most people never build it because they keep betraying themselves. They promise discipline and break it the moment pressure shows up. They promise patience and abandon it the moment boredom creeps in. Over time, they stop believing in their own words. And once that happens, no strategy can save them. You rebuilt that trust slowly, painfully at times, one small decision at a time. You learned to sit on your hands when the urge to act was loud. You learned to walk away when emotions were high. You learned to accept small losses without turning them into identity crises. Those moments didn't look impressive. No one applauded them, but they rewired you. You stopped seeing trading as a place to prove your worth. You stopped tying your self-esteem to your balance. You separated who you are from what the market does on any given day. That separation gave you freedom, and freedom gave you clarity. Clarity changes how you see opportunity. You no longer feel late. You no longer feel behind. You understand that the market will be here tomorrow and the next day and the next. There is no finish line to chase, only a standard to uphold. That standard becomes your anchor during hard times. When things go quiet, when results flatten, when doubt tries to creep back in, you don't abandon your process. You lean into it. You tighten your rules instead of loosening them. You protect your confidence instead of gambling with it. You accept that some seasons are about growth, not profit. Some periods are about survival, not expansion. And you stop resenting those phases. You respect them. This respect is what keeps you grounded when success starts showing up more often. You don't let wins inflate your ego. You don't let them convince you that you're above the rules. You know that consistency is fragile. It must be protected. You remain a student even when you're doing well. You remain humble, not because you doubt yourself, but because you understand how quickly carelessness can undo progress. That awareness doesn't make you anxious. It makes you sharp. At some point, people around you may notice the change, not just in your results, but in how you carry yourself. You're steadier, less reactive, more patient. You don't talk as much about big wins or big plans. You let your behavior speak. And if someone asks you what finally made the difference, you won't point to a secret. You won't point to luck. You'll know the answer is deeper than that. The difference was that You stopped looking for shortcuts and started respecting the process. You stopped asking the market to save you and started holding yourself accountable. You stopped trading to escape discomfort and started trading with intention. You became someone who can be trusted under pressure. That's the real edge. Not speed, not prediction, not cleverness, stability, discipline, emotional control. The ability to show up day after day and do the same simple things well, even when they're boring, even when they're hard, even when no one is watching. This is what most people never commit to. This is why most people stay stuck, not because they're incapable, but because they're unwilling to change who they are, being in the moment. You were willing, and that willingness reshaped everything. So when you think back to the question that once haunted you, why others were profitable and you were not, it no longer carries weight. You see it clearly now. They weren't special. They were disciplined. They weren't lucky. They were consistent. They didn't know more. They acted better. Now, so do you. And that's not something the market can ever take away. Now you understand something that can't be unseen. The gap between you and the traders you once admired was never about talent. It was never about intelligence. It was never about timing. It was about behavior repeated long enough to become identity. They didn't wake up one day and suddenly become profitable. They slowly removed everything that made them unstable. They cut out impulse. They cut out ego. They cut out the need to be right, the need to be involved, the need to feel something every day. What remained was simple, calm execution. You used to think profitable traders had more confidence than you. Now you know the truth. Their confidence came after discipline, not before it. It was built, not assumed, earned, not imagined. You used to think they saw something you didn't. Now you know they simply refused to act when they shouldn't. They were not braver. They were more restrained. They were not faster. They were more patient. That patience didn't make them passive. It made them selective. Selective with their time, selective with their energy, selective with their capital, selective with their emotions. You've become selective too. You don't feel the need to explain yourself anymore. You don't feel the need to chase every move. You don't feel panic when nothing is happening. You trust your process enough to let it work without interference. And that trust didn't come from winning. It came from repetition, from doing the same right thing again and again, even when the outcome didn't immediately reward you. That's something very few people ever experience. Most people quit before they reach this stage. They mistake discomfort for failure. They mistake boredom for stagnation. They mistake slow progress for no progress at all. So they reset. They start over. They chase something new. And they live in that loop for years. You stepped out of it. You stopped asking, how do I make money faster? And started asking, how do I stay consistent longer? That question changed everything. It shifted your focus from outcomes to process, from excitement to stability, from urgency to longevity. Longevity is the real victory here. Anyone can have a good month. Anyone can get lucky once. Very few can remain composed through quiet stretches, drawdowns, uncertainty, and success without losing themselves. That composure is what makes this sustainable. You've learned to respect your limits, to protect your capital, to protect your mindset, to protect your future self from your present impulses. You've learned that the market doesn't reward emotion, it reflects it. And when your emotions are steady, your results follow. You don't need to feel confident every day. You don't need to feel motivated. You don't need to feel inspired. You just need to show up and execute the same simple rules with the same calm discipline. That's what makes you dangerous in this space. Not aggressive, not loud, dangerous because you're consistent, because you're patient, because you're no longer reactive, because you don't destroy yourself on bad days or sabotage yourself on good ones. You become reliable, and reliability compounds. It compounds in your account. It compounds in your confidence. It compounds in your decision making. It compounds in your life. So when you sit down now and look at the market, there's no desperation, no urgency, No need for it to give you anything today. You're already whole without it. You trade because it fits your plan, not because you need relief. That's the difference. That's why others are profitable and most people are not. And that's why, if you keep choosing discipline over impulse, patience over urgency, and structure over chaos, this becomes less about chasing profit and more about becoming the kind of person profit naturally follows. Quietly, consistently, over time,